A high-tech research station on a secluded island. Mutated creatures run amok in the streets. A rescue specialist on vacation, and a stoic sea captain stranded among the chaos. Both joined by a giant naked blue alien fairy. Wait, what? Welcome to Blue Stinger, an action-adventure / survival horror game for the Sega Dreamcast. It also takes place across the 24th and 25th of December, therefore making it qualify as a Christmas holiday title in the same vein that Die Hard is technically a Christmas movie. And if Die Hard can release in February, I sure as hell can put this video out whenever I damn well please. So I invite you all to sit back, relax, and please enjoy this out-of-season Christmas special as we dive into this forgotten niche blend of action-adventure meets holiday horror. Production on Blue Stinger started in 1996 by Japanese developer Climax Graphics, unfortunate name, and it was originally intended for the Sega Saturn. However, Sega encouraged them to shift development to their upcoming Dreamcast system instead. So, restarting production a year later, Blue Stinger would ultimately end up being a launch title for the Dreamcast, and according to Sega Retro, actually released 10 days before the console's launch in North America, coming out on the 31st of August 1999. Imagine getting this game for your birthday, but no console to play it with. Oh wow, cheers, Mum! How do I play it? The development team behind Blue Stinger were pulled in from their brother company, Climax Entertainment, and were composed of the CGI artists that worked on Dark Savior, a platformer puzzle fighting game for the Sega Saturn. Now, while Blue Stinger sold poorly in Japan, it managed to be moderately successful overseas, going on to sell over 500,000 copies worldwide, which isn't too shabby at all, honestly. As much as Climax Graphics was there for the console's beginning, however, they would also be there for its inevitable demise. With the Dreamcast being discontinued at the end of March 2001, the company would release another survival horror title, Ill Bleed, just 1 month later on the 25th of April.
Whoever can clear all of the stages will receive $100 million.
The company would also rebrand themselves to Crazy Games Inc. that same year, supposedly to better distinguish itself from their brother company Climax Entertainment. But let's be real, you don't exactly want Climax associated with anything even remotely kids related. That's just bad optics. Whatever their reasoning, it wouldn't last long, since only 1 year later, after co-developing their last game alongside development team Hitmaker, The Maze of Kings was released for arcade machines, and Crazy Games would shut down in 2002, citing uncertainty in the Japanese economy at the time. Now, while Blue Stinger is labeled as a survival horror game, that almost feels disingenuous to me. Well, yes, it did take inspiration from Resident Evil, with both being 3D tank control driven games in the late 90s featuring 2 playable characters, resource management, and cheesy as hell voice acting.
Barry! Where's Barry?
When you guys were checking the visual record, I was able to access it as well. Let's take a look at it again.
What sets them apart, however, is the tone, with Blue Stinger being very mild in comparison and distinctly lacking in the horror category. Hell, with how easy you can grind enemies for money, you could even make an argument that it's not even very strict on the survival aspect either. Now, sure, there's certainly some body horror when it comes to not just the enemies, which we'll see later, but it certainly leans a lot more in its action-adventure side than classic horror if you ask me. I guess there is technically cosmic horror, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Upon starting up a new game, you're immediately introduced via cutscene to the dinosaurs getting wiped out 65 million years ago. I like the cheesy film grain effect they slapped on, that's how you really know it's prehistoric. Fast forward to the year 2000, and it gives us a text crawl explaining how an earthquake has caused a 400-kilometer landmass to sink into the ocean in the Yucatan Peninsula, leaving behind only a small island at the precise center of the sunken area. Researchers are astonished that the island matches the exact shape of the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs, thus leading to the creatively inspired name of Dinosaur Island. Jumping forward another 18 years to the present day, and we're introduced to 2 lads aboard a yacht just off the coast of Dinosaur Island. Elliot Ballard, our boy in blue, is making funny dino hand gestures and asking his mate Tim why Chimera Tech built such a huge research station on such a tiny island.
Hey Tim. What's up, Elliot?
Tim, however, is just a crew member on a supply ship, and he's not even allowed into the residential district on the island, so he's got no good answer for him. Besides, he's too busy working on a fairy model from the Bottled Angels series anyway. While these two are busy chatting, a meteor comes along to ruin their vacation by smashing through a satellite before crashing into the island. Elliot Ballard tells Tim to start up the engine while he tries to hail the island for a sitrep, although you'd be forgiven for missing that given just how loud the music is here.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Elliot Ballard, Special Sea Rescue C-730, over.
Before they can reach anyone, or even get closer to the island for that matter, a massive shockwave balloons out from the island, knocking Elliot over and catching Tim in a sort of time stasis. The effect and look on Tim's face during this scene is just so good. It caught me off guard and made me laugh so hard the first time I saw it, and it still brings a smile to my face watching it now. After creating this out-of-bounds area, a little blue orb of light floats its way over to inspect the bottled angel that Tim is holding before turning itself into a man-sized version of it, possibly to avoid legal disputes with Nintendo.
Hey, listen!
Not 2 seconds later, a swarm of angry monster dragonflies collide into the boat and explode for some reason? Just how fast were they going? These bugs explode with such force that Elliot Ballard is sent plummeting into the water. Meanwhile, Tim is presumably killed since he was stuck in place, but as it happened off screen, we can't be so sure of that yet. Switching over to an in-game cutscene, we get the cinematic sweeping shot of the island's entrance, and this random helicopter that we didn't see before totally cock up its landing. Nailed it. The life-sized fairy also returns to rub its pixels up against Elliot and implant a vision via mouth-to-mouth of a meteor falling towards Earth with a giant monster superimposed over it. This, understandably, startles him awake, and it's at this point that control of our protagonist is swapped over to the player. We'll talk about the controls and how the game handles soon, but for now, not long after regaining consciousness, a matter of a few steps in fact, Elliot Ballard is contacted by Janine King, the last living member of KISS, an acronym that I'm still not entirely sure what it stands for, but I think it's Camera Island Security Service. Here, he introduces himself as Elliot G. Ballard and insists on using his full name to everyone he meets.
Thanks for helping me. My name is Elliot G. Ballard. This is Elliot Ballard. This is Elliot Ballard, Easter Troop C-730, over.
And while he's a member of the Emergency Sea Evacuation and Rescue Service, or ESER, he makes it clear that he's on vacation and in need of help just as much as Janine is. Clearly frustrated at this, Janine gives him a quick sit-rep and suggests that he finds an ID card off of one of the many corpses lying around.
First, find an ID card. I'm sure there are a number of corpses around. You should be able to find one of them with an ID card.
I like Elliot's alarm at this tidbit of info.
Corpses? Did you say there are a number of corpses around? Where?
Like, mate, you saw a giant meteor crash into the island, not to mention the helicopter that just exploded. Are you really that surprised to hear there's a few dead people? I'm unsure whether he has a concussion, is a bit slow, or perhaps it's simply the casual manner in which Janine mentions it, but either way, the corpses are not at all like what you would have expected. Instead, there are all these strange hybrids of man and monster that actually kinda look like crusty versions of the necromorphs from Dead Space. You also get a peek of this bearded sailor watching Elliot Ballard as he enters the facility, except he isn't there when you turn back to look for him. Spooky. A couple minutes later, after snatching a keycard and progressing across a bridge, Elliot Ballard is ambushed by a monster that is then double ambushed by the same guy following him. This is where we're introduced to Dogs Bauer, captain of the SS Diana, a supply ship, the same ship that Tim works for. He interrogates our protagonist about Tim's condition and gets rightfully annoyed when he's given such a lackluster answer.
Tim is what? Dead?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know? Is that Easter's answer?
He then starts berating him to his face and insists on tagging along since he has zero faith in Elliot's ability to look after himself. Which, given the way that Elliot is acting, looking away and being all timid, I can't say I really blame him. For somebody that's supposed to be a specialized rescue team member, he's such a pushover. Dogs is just awesome, by the way, definitely my favorite character.
Obviously, you're going to need good help, like me. I can't let a wimp like you go alone.
Whatever.
Immediately after teaming up, Elliot and Dogs are both ambushed by yet another monster that this time gets comically spin-sniped off the ledge by Janine. Dogs not only swears like a sailor, like he should, being a sea captain.
No shit.
but his reactions are always just so absurd, and the still delivery makes it unintentionally funny to me.
A woman?
We'll talk more about the voice acting when we get to the audio part of the review, but for now, Janine informs the boys that in order to reach her at the command center, they'll have to find a key card to get past the locked gate and restore functionality to the slope shuttle. Now, you might be wondering why she doesn't just come down and let them in herself, but she does have an injured leg, so she can't move very far, I guess. This whole section serves as a kind of tutorial for how the rest of the game plays. You get around using tank controls like most traditional action or survival horror games, and can both move or climb specific objects, most typically being crates, by walking up to them and either pressing or holding down the action button. Doing so is mandatory to climb up atop of this hut to grab the keycard off this sorry sod's corpse, then hop back down to open the locked door below. In order to access the door for the first time, however, you need to first interact with the ID console besides it. You don't have to go rummaging for your items in the menu either, just walking up and pressing the action key on the card reader is enough to grant you access, provided you have the necessary clearance in the first place. Inside, there is a visitor ID, Elliot's first ranged weapon, the handgun, and a KISS computer terminal, which serves as Blue Stinger's save point. There's no limited resources tied to saving your game, the only real limitation is the number of slots available, which is more than enough. In order to equip that weapon that we just picked up, we'll have to access the menu, and from here we can manage our team's weapons. Elliot Ballard comes with both a short and long weapon option. As an Acer team member, he's familiar with both melee and conventional ranged weapons, it seems, up to and including rocket launchers and laser guns, apparently. I question what kind of specialized sea rescue operation requires its members to be trained in handling high explosives, but I'm not complaining. Meanwhile, Dog's Bower is solely restricted to the long weapon slot, the notable exception to this being when he's properly dressed to kill for the occasion. By simply slapping on different shirts that you can find or buy, he's able to perform unique martial arts, but only when he's wearing this outfit. I don't know what else to say other than his cosplay power level is simply that good. Fortunately, Dog starts off with his bow gun and can later find some upgrades like a railgun and a literal Gatling gun later on. You're also able to swap between Dogs and Elliot at nearly any time throughout the story, barring a few key moments, by selecting who you want to control through the same menu. As an aside, I love the weird noise Dogs makes whenever you select him or he saves the game. He's just so pleased with himself, it's infectious.
Gotcha!
Now, while the game treats Dogs and Elliot as both being present in cutscenes and for the purpose of carrying key items such as access cards and so on, you only ever actually see whoever you're currently controlling on screen when playing. Which, whether a hardware limitation or mercy on the part of the developers in choosing not to have us babysit an AI to control team member throughout the game, I'm more than fine with. It also helps to cut down on inventory management, as they're both considered to be carrying the same pool of items, their weapons notwithstanding, so you'll never have to switch back and forth trying to remember who picked up what. It's very lenient about that. This is a huge help, as the differences between the two are more than just arsenal and aesthetics, as they both have independent health pools and different stats to a degree. Elliot, our Acer member, is faster, but takes noticeably more damage from individual hits than Dogs does, making Elliot the safer choice for evading enemies. Meanwhile, Dog's Bower is built like a truck and can face tank your way through them, which can be necessary at times. Letting either of your two heroes reach 0 health results in a game over, so you'll want to keep them topped up outside of combat, or be quick on alternating between the two during a fight in order to pick and choose the right time to heal up. Since you can only restore either character's health by having them active and using a food or drink item, which plays a short animation of them consuming it, or taking just a single bite out of a sandwich before tossing it over their shoulder. These two are such litter bugs. The amount of 6-packs of Hassie and half-eaten burgers they've left lying around Dinosaur Island must be insane. And can you imagine inviting them over for dinner? They'll take one bite out of the meal before tossing it on the floor and then rearranging your furniture to climb all over it. This animation can be interrupted, by the way, and you will lose the item with no benefit if this happens, which adds an element of risk-reward to encounters, especially boss fights. Most of my non-platforming related deaths came from being mobbed by swarms of enemies, or bosses hitting me while I desperately try to stuff my face like it's Estus in Dark Souls. Now, while you'll find some weapons lying around or be awarded them for meeting certain criteria like saving an NPC's life within a certain time frame, others you can simply buy through vending machines scattered throughout the island. Which I just love the absurdity of vending machine plasma guns. Only in America, God bless the Second Amendment. You're not limited in inventory space either, in fact it's overly generous if anything, allowing you to haul around multiple cumbersome weapons by the end, including several different types of rocket launchers, dozens upon dozens of packed lunches, and other miscellaneous items scattered throughout the island. There's different types of vending machines that stock different types of ammo and health supplies, so it's generally good to check with any that you find lying around to keep your supplies stocked up. And outside of the early game, I didn't really feel like I was ever strapped for cash. Towards the latter half of the game, money becomes so plentiful, provided you're willing to do a bit of backtracking. And even if you don't, by then, former human enemies spill out more dosh than your typical Yakuza street fight. Once you're familiar enough with the combat, which isn't particularly complex or challenging outside of a few boss fights, the ability to grind for money is never far out of reach, but also never really all that necessary in the first place. The coins drop so freely that they'll sometimes clip through walls or fall out of bounds though, which made me cry inside. Now that we've got our Mad Lads equipped and a keycard to access the next checkpoint, our boys are greeted by these tentacles sticking out of the ground, which we're free to take out without worrying about them respawning. It's usually only humanoid enemies that repopulate whenever we leave and then re-enter a room. So, with these green grabby boys either avoided or eliminated, Elliot and Dogs can access the computer controls for the slope shuttle. Upon activation, we're introduced to the first of several time sections, which Blue Stinger has a bad habit of overly relying on throughout multiple parts of the game. Normally, time sections aren't so bad. They can be an effective means of instilling a sense of tension and urgency when done right. Blue Stinger, on the other hand, relies on it to the point that it feels overdone, and the most egregious one is tied to the most difficult fight in the entire game, which by then definitely overstayed its welcome. I'll save the specific details on that for when we get to the spoiler section much later on. For now though, we've got 2 minutes to make our way to the maintenance room and stop the shuttle from falling and killing the person on board. Now granted, the amount of time you're given to complete these sections are generally enough to do so if you know what you're doing. On a first time playthrough though, you don't know what you're doing. So I ended up missing the ladder off to one side and got to watch as Elliot gets crushed and clipped through the floor of the shuttle. Skill issue on my part, to be fair, I just didn't notice it. Successfully finding the ladder and hitting the reset button for the shuttle, we not only save the bloke on board who gives us no useful new information, but we do also get a napalm rifle for Elliot. Once inside the command room, or the brain center as it's referred to in game, but I'm not calling it that, our two chaps meet Janine in person, and that blue fairy reappears who Janine immediately mag dumps to no effect. Honestly, based. Elliot names her Nephilim after the bottled angel that Tim was working on.
Nephilim?
Nephilim?
She's harmless. So far.
And from here, Janine reveals that she's just as in the dark as to why there's monsters running around as both Dogs and Elliot. Nephilim, unable to speak, tries her best to steer the gang towards what's going on by accessing the computer logs. This lists a bunch of different science fields that the R&D department were working on, including something called Dinocyte. However, before they can get any answers, the program's security systems kick in, locking them out.
What the hell happened?
The programmer's security system.
Space biology? Dinocyte? Janine, can't you break the code?
So they're gonna need a lab ID in order to access the restricted files. With a clear objective in mind and no better alternatives, it's time for Dogs and Elliot to try their luck at Rat's place, where Dogs has ran up quite the tab, but he's adamant that you can get just about anything at Rat's place, so that's where they're headed to next. This basically sets up the framework and pacing for how the rest of Blue Stinger plays out. You go out, collect keys to unlock doors to access more areas, complete some fetch quest or similar objective, then come back to meet up with Janine in the command center to share your findings before you go out and do the same all over again in a new area of the island. This sets up a structured gameplay loop of exploration, fighting, and some light puzzle solving before coming back to restock and rest before going out and doing more of the same again. The downside to this formula, however, is the amount of backtracking that the player ends up doing. This mainly stems as a problem with the level design, which is typically broken up into branching paths that rarely connect to one another. So typically, once you've completed an area, you'll often be very far away from the command center and have to go all the way back the same way you came. There's one or two exceptions to this, but they're honestly not much better. One of them includes a swimming section, with the controls for the swimming itself being not at all very good. If you press nothing, you'll slowly sink to the bottom, meanwhile constantly tapping the action button lets you stay buoyant on the surface, then finally holding down the action button causes Elliot to swim forward. While it makes some sense, it doesn't feel very intuitive, and it's very slow and extremely janky. Like, come on, Tomb Raider came out 3 years earlier than this, and it feels 20,000 leagues better by comparison. I absolutely think the game would have benefited from some kind of fast travel system. Some kind of method allowing you to access key areas that you'll want to revisit again from the command center, such as the Hello Market to stock up on gear, or the bank that otherwise requires you to waste 20 minutes swimming there and back again. That feels entirely unnecessary. Besides, once you've cleared your way through an area the first time, you've already proven that the regular enemies aren't that much of a threat. The camera controls are way more deadly than the regular enemies anyway, whether it's trying to align yourself to not fall during platforming sections towards the tail end of the game, or with how claustrophobic the hallways can get at times, making it a pain to navigate through, let alone even see what you're meant to be aiming at. Apparently the original Japanese release has fixed camera angles, and I can't say which scares me more. Graphically speaking, I think Blue Stinger looks pretty good for its time. And I'm not sure what it is, but there's something I really enjoy about the late 90s attempts at making human faces. Elliot and Dogs both look really good, meanwhile Tim, by comparison, looks more like something out of Reboot. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just kind of funny to me. It's like the industry doesn't quite yet know how they want to do it. The monster designs range from kinda mid to actually kind of awesome. Without spoiling it, the final boss design is pretty rad. The only real letdown is this one particular boss inside the cinema that looks more like a bunch of rubbish bins gaffer taped together. You even fight a frozen version of it earlier on that looks miles better by comparison. Here though, I don't even know what this is that I'm meant to be looking at. The levels themselves, while admittedly suffering from the issue of not really being interconnected to one another, and at times being too narrow to be borderline claustrophobic, at least look nice and have enough details that make them seem lived in and believable. Even if some of their layouts don't quite make sense or are a little too mazy for my liking. At least you can look at something and immediately know what it's meant to be, or more often than not tell at a glance whether something is interactable or not. The only real exception being face mashing yourself with a specific computer in one or two spots, and finding a keycard hidden in a bloody plant pot for some reason. But even then, there's a flashing light to indicate that there's something there, so even that's not so bad.
Yeah.
I suppose there's no better time than the present to mention the voice acting. As you've no doubt noticed by now, it's rather campy and cheesy to say the very least, a standard quality of the 90s.
I didn't think I was gonna make it. Thank you!
What's happening on the island?
A meteor must have hit the island. Since that, everything turned upside down.
And what were those monsters?
I don't know. I haven't a clue.
We'll be pressing on. You should stay here. The shuttle's safe now.
Some of you may even recognize the voice actors, as it's around the time that Dogs was flabbergasted that a woman could be such a good marksman,
A woman?
that I realized the main cast are all voiced by future Sonic actors. Like, immediately after Blue Stinger, they'd all go on to voice Sonic characters. Elliot is Sonic, Dogs is Eggman, Janine is Rouge from Sonic Adventure 2, and Tim is voiced by Big the Cat, not to mention Duke Nukem himself.
Damn, I'm good.
So you've effectively got a team up between Sonic and Eggman as they run around the island defeating enemies that drop coins like their rings, and I just feel like I'm playing a weird alternate universe Sonic the Hedgehog fan game at this point. What a fever dream idea. In any case, I'm actually kind of a fan of the performances in this game, but for the wrong reasons.
Taking a bath in the middle of a battle. That cool.
Well, I guess.
Hey, you're more macho than I thought.
Shut up.
Yeah, it's definitely bad at some places, and it sounds stilted in others. There's also times where it sounds like it's sped up, with characters answering one another too snappy during conversations in the command center.
We can't get into the host of the lab.
We have a light here.
It's coming from a different route. I'll bet you need a bigger electric system in the deep island.
What are they doing in such a place?
The lab there is called Fossil Home. Even security guards are not allowed to get in there. It's like a black box. I've never seen anything like it.
And while Elliot's horniness for Janine can get pretty eye-rolling at times, there's something about the voice acting that is so endearing to me. Maybe it's witnessing the chemistry between Dogs and Elliot as friends as the story develops. It's both heartwarming and funny to see, especially with the unexpected reactions Dogs would give at times. We'll get into the weeds of why these two work so well together later on in the full spoilered story section, but for now, let's talk about the soundtrack. Blue Stinger's music was composed by Toshihiko Sahashi, I hope I'm saying that right, who has a pretty prolific career, ranging from all sorts of films, OVAs, video games, and dramas. His work includes things such as Mobile Suit Gundam Seed, to Kamen Rider, to Hunter x Hunter. The list really does go on and on. The TLDR is the guy can write music. For Blue Stinger, he was given the direction to compose a Hollywood-style score and was given as much time as he wants to work on it. Toshihiko also stated that he wanted to emulate John Williams, and judging by the opening and ending scores, I can certainly see, or should I say hear, that influence. They both definitely match that kind of style and sound pretty pleasant to listen to. I think it's worth noting that there's not really any tracks that I'd listen to here and think, yeah, that sounds like horror to me. Well, not unless you count the Christmas music. You know, they say too much of a good thing is bad for you, and the music in Blue Stinger is the very definition of that saying. Imagine listening to this 2.5-minute song, on loop, non-stop, for hours. Please God, somebody help me! My problem with the music boils down to that, much like the backtracking level design, it becomes very, 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 very repetitive very quickly. And since each track is tied to a specific area, you can be stuck listening to the same song for minutes or even hours, depending on how long it takes to complete a section, or heavens forbid you get stuck. So navigating the Hello Market and listening to this Merry Christmas shopping music uninterrupted for hours at a time nearly broke me. Also, because the music is tied to areas and not what's actually happening, there's a lot of times where it simply feels out of place. More than once there was a dramatic moment going on, but the music is acting more like there's some epic chase scene or the like. Not to mention it can sometimes get so loud you have a hard time hearing what the main characters are even trying to say.
This is a pretty fancy boat for just a crew member.
It's not mine. I rented it from the Kimura Tech Group.
Volume issues aside, I'd rank the overall soundtrack as being pretty good. If I had to pick one specific track as being head and shoulders above the rest, it would probably be the eponymously named Blue Stinger. It's bombastic and appropriately epic for when it's featured. It also isn't played to death, so that's probably a major contributing factor. The Christmas song will forever be living rent-free in my head now, though, so cheers for that. Alright, with all the technical stuff out of the way, it's time to dive deep into Blue Stinger's story. So if you want to avoid spoilers, or intend to play this game for yourself, which, why would you do that? Then you can either skip ahead to the timestamp marked here for my final thoughts and conclusion, or pause the video and come back to it once you finish. I mean, you don't have to, but it'd be kind of cool if you did come back and finish watching it, but you do you. In any case, I'll be covering just about everything that happens in the story, and there's no multiple endings or the like, so once you've beaten Blue Stinger once, you've more or less seen all it has to offer. Outside of a few New Game Plus rewards for beating the game in a certain time frame anyway. Alright, with all those disclaimers out of the way, let's get started. Back in the command center, after determining that the most likely place to get a programmer's ID that can bypass the computer's security would be at Rat's place, our boys head out for the most direct route to the local pub. Which would be straight through the market, except that the safety wall is active, preventing any chance of getting past. Janine isn't much help in shutting them down remotely either, so we're stuck looking for another way around. We do find a keycard for the Hello Marketplace conveniently lying nearby, and Janine confirms that the market's freezer should exit out near Rat's place. While we're here, I need to quickly mention that I love how gaudy the Christmas decorations are. It's like they've just copy-pasted anything remotely Christmas related onto just about every surface in the district. It makes me wonder in universe if they got all of this imported or if they just had a warehouse full of the stuff lying around the island somewhere. Alright, that's enough window shopping, because once we get inside, we find the store manager lying on the floor of his office having a medical emergency.
Hey, what's wrong?
I get this fit once in a while.
Hey, Devlin, where's the key to the freezer warehouse?
Dogs is straight to the point and shows zero empathy for this guy. Meanwhile, Elliot, having an actual conscience, volunteers to fetch the medicine that he needs. So we've got our second time section with a fairly generous 42 minutes to track down some Dachshund from the pharmacy stand. Of course, given we have more than half an hour, it's not going to be that easy as they're entirely sold out, so we're going to have to go look for some more upstairs. And thanks to the whole it being Christmas deal, access to the upper floor is currently restricted for anyone who hasn't completed the market stamp rally. So before we can even get up there, it's necessary to track down and scan all 4 of these Ren and Stimpy rejects.
Let's join in the Happy Market Christmas Stamp Rally now!
Looks aside, they're actually characters from Pen Pen Try Isolon, another launch title for the Dreamcast. I'm also like 99% sure the voice explaining this is just Janine's VA putting on a funny voice.
Collect all 4 stamps! When you collect all 4 stamps, you can purchase great items with a special discount on the second floor! Yay!
I know it's definitely her doing the announcer for most of the computers you interact with too, for that matter.
Stand by for immediate departure.
Given the market's somewhat maze-like layout and the in-game map not giving you detailed names for any of the rooms, just the floor that you're on, it's a lot of trial and error trying to find your way around. Eventually, we managed to find our ways into the storage rooms in the back and push around some crates to access a security console. This allows us to lower the shutters, blocking off the rest of the market.
Also, why is it up here? Why is it like 15 feet off the ground? That makes like no sense. But whatever.
Fast forward past that, and we have Elliot face mashing the walls of this toy room, since the camera just doesn't know what to do with corners this tight. The turning in game is already rather floaty, and when combined with these tight corners, it handles about as drunk as it looks. A quick rundown of the section has us grabbing a rental video keycard, get swarmed by monsters and die, redo this section because I forgot to save, finish fighting all 4 stamps, make our way upstairs, and immediately get mauled by the first boss that I had no idea I was running straight into. Oh yeah, this guy's technically not even a boss, by the way, since it doesn't have a huge enemy bar like every other one does. But you try telling him that, cause this guy's got hands. It attacks quick and hits hard for how flimsy my health bar is at this early in the game, and this makes it one of the most dangerous proper boss fights in the entire game due to how tiny the room is. I only barely managed to scrape out a win by unloading as much ammo as I can before having to frantically swap back and forth between Dogs and Elliot whenever their health gets low. I mean, look at this! I can just barely manage to run from one side of the room to the other to sneak in a quick heal before it's on my ass clapping my cheeks again. It's pretty rough, but if it wasn't for the cheery Christmas music, I would honestly say this is one of the more exciting moments of the entire game. With that dealt with, we find another worker inside who gives us a key for the safe that's in the manager's office. We also take a quick look around to see what else is for sale, and Elliot ends up getting poor shamed by a security door. Which I thought was strange, but between the out-of-reach security console and the fact that the place is selling not just guns, but massive war maces, I realized, yeah, that checks out. With the key and medicine in hand, we crack open the safe and get the key for the freezer, as well as the manager giving us a key for the storage area in exchange for saving his life. I'm starting to notice a pattern with all these key cards right now. The storage area holds the burst fire shotgun for Elliot. It's a worthy upgrade, being able to take out the standard humanoid enemies in as little as 2 bursts, so this will definitely see a lot of use. Once inside the freezer, I'm breathing a sigh of relief from the change of music. Meanwhile, Dogs is shocked to find that the door is frozen shut.
This is unusual. Why is the door frozen? I've got to raise the temperature, or else we'll be frozen meat before we reach Rat's place.
So the temperature has got to be fixed before they become popsicles. The whole gimmick of this part is darting room to room looking for key cards to open more doors and eventually access the heater controls, all the while having to contend with enemies in the hallways and regulating your character's body temperature before this teeny tiny bar runs out, at which point it'll start draining your actual health. It's also entirely possible to just ignore this mechanic. Who knew you could combat hypothermia by cracking open a couple of cold ones? Eventually, you can find a heater that lets you ignore the health-draining hot-cold mechanic entirely, at least up until the point where they turn the heater up too high and have the complete opposite problem now.
Now it's too hot. We set the temperature too high.
Let's get out of here.
It's here that we run to the game's second boss fight, or first, technically, if we're going by health bar standards. This one is substantially easier given the glacial turn speed, and the fact that it completely whiffs its attack even when Elliot's standing so close he could freeze his tongue by licking it. Despite its size and speed, I still somehow managed to miss about half of my shots thanks to the lack of a proper aim system. Once it's given a chance to cool off, we grab a key to the control room off of its corpse, allowing the temperature to be raised to melt that frozen door. So now you've got to play the area in reverse, with the place being too hot and having to cool down instead, which I thought was actually a pretty neat way of flipping the scenario on its head. On the way out, we see a giant rhino bug in a block of ice. Sure hope that isn't foreshadowing anything. In order to leave, we need to do some platforming to grab a keycard that's hidden atop some ice blocks for some reason. It's worth mentioning that Blue Stinger doesn't have any kind of jumping or proper platforming mechanics besides rudimentary climbing. So this is beyond janky, and you just have to kind of line yourself up and awkwardly run at it. Looking back at it, I think I just cheesed the solution and you were actually supposed to turn the heat back up, so whoops. Hands down, my favorite part of this whole freezer section is having dogs karate kick a slab of meat blocking the exit. Upon getting outside, Janine contacts Elliot for basically a nothing burger of a conversation, but we do get to see her hang up when Dogs tries to talk to her for some reason, which, yeah, obviously upsets him.
That snotty little brat. I bet her mother is exactly like her.
You're in a bad mood.
There's clearly some bad blood between them, which we'll no doubt discover more about in time. Anyway, Dogs enters the women's bathroom by climbing through a window. Inside, we loot a railgun, presumably off the body of another KISS security guard, given she's basically just a recolor of Janine's model. The railgun rules, by the way. It does a hefty amount of damage and knocks most enemies back, which is actually going to come in clutch much later on. Going to the arcade, we find a little girl crying in a corner next to a locked door. Elliot comforts her by vandalizing the Jurassic Park shooting range in order to give her Gailey a stuffed toy. She then starts hitting on Elliot and gives him a hint for the door code, reminding him that it's Christmas Eve. So, putting in today's date, we then leg it through the streets until we finally reach Rat's place, where we push a pool table in order to interact with this glowing symbol on the wall that is otherwise out of reach for some reason. Why you gotta shame my short kings like that? Anyway, hitting the button opens a secret passage leading beneath the bar where Dogs is immensely disappointed to discover that the owner is still alive.
Dogs, thank God you're here. Ready to pay off your debt?
Dang, he's alive! I was hoping you'd be dead so that I'd be debt-free.
That's too bad. Most of my clients are dead.
Dogs, get to the point.
Rather than just hand us the ID that we're looking for, he makes us bend over and do it ourselves. What a bell end. On the way back, we nip over to the bank real quick to commit some credit fraud and empty these bank cards that we found, before then making our way to the fishing place. Sadly, it's a fishing shop and not a chippy. Going through and clearing out the giant fish that have infested the place, we get a hold of some fish poison that we can then yeet into a pool full of angry piranhas. After a brief struggle of understanding the swimming controls and a not at all brief swimming trip back to the market, we return to the command center to meet up with Janine, and they're already exchanging pet names.
Welcome home, tough guy.
This is for you, honey.
The ID that we got works, but the computer requires a password. Inspecting the driver's license gives a clue as it references the date of birth, and putting that in actually works, showing that yet again security is severely lacking on Dinosaur Island. Not that it does much good, as yet another problem turns up to prevent the gang from accessing the lab's hosting database. It seems the island's power plant isn't outputting enough energy for the lab, so there's nothing else for it but heading over to check it out. It's at this time that Elliot's spidey sense tingles, and he suggests that Dog sticks with Janine. Janine's having none of it and shuts him down on account that she's a grown-ass woman that can take care of herself.
Good. I'll go. Hey, Dogs.
What?
Stay with Janine. I kinda have a bad feeling. When it comes to bad luck, my hunches tend to be right on.
Never mind. I don't need a guardian.
She made a choice.
Which, going by her shooting skills, more power to her. As the boys head out to play electrician, we get a CGI cutscene of Janine looking at her locket that she opens up to reveal a really unflattering picture of Dogs. It looks like someone just randomly snapped it on the island recently. He's even wearing the same outfit. Before we get a chance to speculate on the implications, however, the game cuts back and gives me tonal whiplash.
What a bitch.
Dogs, what the hell? She didn't do anything. Anyway, with tears in my eyes, we stop to make a detour and get into an optional boss fight with Dogs doing battle against a Jeep Crab, which is equal parts stupid as it is awesome. And the design is kind of cute, honestly. That purple smoke it spits out does quite a bit of damage, so kiting and attacking whatever it's not defending itself is key. I'm not entirely sure what it's doing on a helipad, but maybe it drove in here through the giant locked gate. Regardless, once it's defeated, we can safely budge this giant boulder aside to head downstairs and collect the Gatling gun for Dogs. Which, while it has tons of ammo, Dogs just sprays and prays with this weapon, which does limit its viability a little bit. With our new GAT acquired, we get started on the long journey to the power plant, unfortunately having to contend with the island's automated defense systems along the way. That means we have to now avoid these indestructible floating drones shooting lasers at Dogs and Elliot the whole time. They're more annoying than anything, especially when they're effectively stun locking you in place whenever you get hit by one up close. And given that they're usually so high above you and you can't pan the camera up at all, you're effectively reliant on just blindly zigzagging and praying that they miss you, which is by far not 100% guaranteed, as you'll still occasionally get sniped. It's just a resource tax and a test of your patience more than anything. At least the path has a bunch of these little satellite dish bunkers that offer a chance to heal up, loot another bank card among other items, as well as save your game once you're finally at the fueling station. About halfway there, and it turns out the road leading to the power plant has been completely obliterated, so our rescue team is going to have to devise another way to get across. And they're going to do it in the most ludicrous way possible. Climbing up the fuel tank, there's a computer that warns about the dangers of exposing the fuel intakes to air. Naturally, I have Elliot kick them open to cause a fiery reaction, and then interact with the computer again and have all of about 0.2 seconds to react before I immediately die to this little explosion following me. Like, who would think, ah yes, that fiery explosion I started on the top of the tank, that's just gonna spontaneously teleport next to me. I better run up the tank that's about to explode. Like, what? What's even more unhinged is the fact that that's the solution. You're gonna run up, outrun this fire, do this little baby jump, and then the explosion double jumps you across the canyon. What? This is where Blue Stinger jumps the shark into Hollywood blockbuster. That is so dumb. Full health, by the way. From here, the Kimmertech power plant is just a short jog away, and there's also a rocket launcher atop of a parked Jeep just outside. But despite our ability to climb crates, tables, and apparently double jump, Elliot draws the line at climbing the hood of some bloke's car, so we'll have to come back for it later. Inside, Elliot fumbles around in the dark until he switches on the emergency power, then face checks the computer terminals until he finds one that can give a status report on the power plant. It turns out 4 of the superconductive capacitors are damaged and need replacing. This boils down to checking the storage room for a crank to open up the door leading to the rest of the building, which I love how Dogs just stands there and just kind of does this awkward cheering gesture while Elliot works it.
Yeah, remember, Elliot, if things don't work out between you and Janine, this is the only cranking you're gonna be doing.
Then, having to check about 24 or more side rooms in these near identical hallways to track down some insulated gloves and enough replacement parts to carry out the repairs. At least the doors and hallways are all marked, so you kind of know where you are, but not really. It also comes down to the fact that you're constantly triggering enemy respawns non-stop as you go from one room to the next looking for the necessary items. If you're not paying 100% attention, which is pretty understandable since you're constantly under attack, then you can end up checking the same rooms multiple times. On the bright side, we find a stun baton for Elliot, which is probably my favorite melee weapon for him, since it's fast, fairly powerful, and can stun enemies. It's in the name, after all. but it has one very serious glaring flaw. Can you hazard a guess what it is? I didn't edit the volume. That's just how loud it is in the game. The bass boosted volume peaks so bad it causes the DreamCast sound chip to freak out. Hell, it was so bad it was giving my hearing aid a mini aneurysm whenever I had to use this thing. So I'm sure nobody's surprised I had my mouse constantly hovering over my system's volume controls from this point on. If I had only one wish when it came to something I'd change about Blue Stinger, it'd be the gift of balanced audio levels. With the repairs complete, we try to divert power to the rest of the island, except there's another snag. Something is stopping the power from being outputted properly, so we're gonna have to go investigate that too. Which means heading up to the first floor and navigating our way across these OSHA violation death pits of a walkway, whilst these annoying flying bugs keep stun-locking our heroes. The bug problem gets even worse as one of these giant dragonflies is carrying a dead worker that drops a required keycard. I love how the game pauses when you kill it too, making it look like this other bug is just politely waiting for dogs to catch his breath. I was also pleasantly surprised to discover you can destroy these windows, since I think there is only one other time this feature even turns up and it's never necessary or tied in with the plot at all. It's just a nice little attention to detail that I didn't expect to see. We're not done with pest control just yet, however. As it turns out, the source of the power drain is all of these zappy boys sucking out all the juice in the condenser room.
This monster was sucking up all the juice.
We've got to get rid of them.
Now, rather than try to think of some clever way of dealing with the problem, the solution to clear them out of this room that I imagine is full of very sensitive equipment is to just shoot them. We also get to see just how unhelpful the Gatling gun really is. Oh well, time to shoot explosive rail rounds indiscriminately.
We got the light.
Dogs, let's get out of here. Something's wrong.
No shit, Sherlock. You guys just dumped more munitions than a small army in here. I'm astounded it's still functional. But as it turns out, Elliot's plot spidey sense was actually talking about Janine as she's ghosted him on Skype. On the way out, another one of those truck stations show up and drop a rocket launcher with Elliot's name on it. No, seriously, it's literally called Elliot's bazooka. All that mucking around in the power plant meant I was actually running pretty low on ammo, so I cut it pretty close before Elliot manages to finish the thing off with his handgun. And just as I went to heal, the game cock-blocked me by having Elliot loot some car keys off of it, so my Sani just disappeared into the ether. I like to imagine that he gave it to the crab. I mean, look at all those cute little face arms! He's got such itty-bitty little hands! Just as the boys finish legging it back, Janine collapses from a vision given by Nephilim, this time showing the UFO that Nephi arrived in that crashed through a satellite and impacted inside some crater, along with more looks at that menacing bug boy we kept seeing sneak peeks of earlier. For some reason, this gives Janine enough context clues to figure out that Nephilim is currently detached from its body, enabling it to float around as the weird blue alien fairy we've seen throughout much of the game and giving our main characters those monster headache-inducing exposition dumps. Well, with the power no longer acting up, the gang can finally see that there's a blinking blue light located beyond the Kimmer Tech Labs labeled Unknown Object. That's definitely gotta be the source of the disaster. It's also during this conversation that the time rolls over to midnight, making it officially Christmas Day.
Merry Christmas!
Oh, this is the worst Christmas I ever had.
To celebrate the occasion, Janine gifts us with access to the car park, allowing us to hitch a ride to the lab rather than having to leg it on foot for once. It's also payday for Elliot.
Damn, it's my payday.
So, you know what that means? I'm going to assume the weird stasis bubble is why it looks like it's daytime outside even though it's midnight. I must have lost my mind, because after all that running around the island, fighting monsters and unlocking doors, I'm almost glad to be welcomed by the Christmas music again. I'll tell you, I wasn't glad to be spending 20 minutes swimming to and from the bank just to use these cards again though. But now that we're absolutely loaded with dosh, it's time to see what's behind that poor-shaming security door. Surprise, surprise, it's guns. Lots of guns and ammo.
Ah, yes. Lots of ammo.
Notable purchases include a sumo shirt for dogs and the plasma gun for Elliot. There's also a ray gun for a little under $1 million, but it's sold out, and it's actually a new game plus unlock for beating the game in under 4 hours, so no chance to get to use that. I did discover why these meal plates were so expensive though. It turns out that not only do they restore your health, they actually permanently increase it too. Sure wish I knew that sooner. We also hit up the strip club, because why wouldn't you on Christmas Day, and find the ray sword for Elliot. Now, while it may be better on paper, in practice it feels slower and more awkward to use than the stun baton, and it's just as loud, so screw it, I'm just gonna be sticking with what I know. With that last-minute Christmas shopping over and done with, it's time to hitch a ride to our next destination. After running the length of the island there and back again already, Blue Stinger finally shows some mercy and lets you skip the tedious legwork for a change. But don't get used to it. At least we get to enjoy watching the boys kick the car into high gear and the satisfaction of busting straight through the research lab's front gate. Now, given it's a biotech lab, entry is strictly monitored and requires clean suits in order to even gain access to the labs proper. This leads to Dogs and Elliot having to find a change of clothes, and they're in luck as there's 2 suits lying around. There's only one not so small problem.
I can't fit into a size M.
I guess you'll have to go without changing.
This is an issue for all of about 30 seconds before Elliot finds a Santa suit that's more Dogs' size.
This Santa's outfit is size LL.
Hey, what are you suggesting?
It's perfect for you.
So this means we get treated to Santa Dogs on Christmas Day.
When you have a kid, I'll visit you from the chimney.
Bloody brilliant. They even get a bath scene together, and the banter they exchange between one another is nothing short of being simply superb.
What you'll do if the monster attacks you while you're butt naked.
I'll fight back butt naked. Stop whining! Let's jump in the tub.
This is where their relationship really starts to evolve and elevates the connection between our 2 protagonists and my liking towards them. The whole lab section as a whole is where Blue Stinger hits its peak in my opinion, with their bickering chemistry and the shift in Dogs' attitude towards Elliot through what follows really cementing it for me. Since it's not long after chilling with his bro that Elliot is ambushed by a literal Metroid. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Elliot also accidentally swallowed some of its mucus. This results in a horrible purple rash breaking out all over his skin, and it only gets progressively worse and worse for him from here. Despite being a highly secure research lab, or because of it, let's be fair, the place is a death trap. It's a toxin-filled hallway that mimics the earlier freezer mechanics, except replaced temperature for oxygen supply, but nothing some tank pushing wouldn't fix. Doing so allows us to progress deeper into the facility, which quickly becomes very confusing in terms of layout. The repeating wall textures make it difficult to discern where I am at times, so this can lead to a fair bit of revisiting rooms I've already searched. I have to mention, it was also a little unclear in what I was even meant to be doing, and I ended up just stumbling into where I was meant to be to advance a handful of times. Eventually, my progress was halted by an elevator that scanned Elliot and denied entry given the presence of the Dinocyte cell, the mutation that's infected not only him, but the rest of the occupants of Dinosaur Island. How the rest of the island got infected outside the research lab, I don't actually know. I'm not sure if the game just doesn't tell you, maybe I missed something, but I don't think it tells you what caused the outbreak. Anyway, again, I really like the dynamic between them, as Elliot's finally being a lot less flippant than he has been, and Dogs is starting to show some genuine concern for another person for a change. Even going so far as to refuse to go on without him, instead choosing to look for a cure or a way for them both to get past the elevator.
Somebody will show up.
Stupid, nobody will come. You're all dead. Take it off me, please.
I said don't talk. Here, let me.
During their search, the boys saved a scientist lady that looks like she's wearing a mop on her head instead of having hair, and are told that Dr. Jacob in the lower levels would be their best bet at curing Elliot's infection. Okay, so now we really need a way past the elevator. But on the way down, Elliot's condition starts to deteriorate. It then goes one step further when they reach the elevator room again, as the room's sensors detect Elliot's advanced contamination and refuses to lift the containment lockdown, trapping them inside. Fortunately, the upside to Elliot's new form is that he can now emulate Spider-Man and climb along these pipes to get around the facility. This means he can now access previously unreachable rooms, including one that contains frozen supplies of blood that, once defrosted, can be used to trick the scanner into letting our mad lads use the elevator. This whole segment is a pretty cool new addition of mechanics, which is only slightly impeded by the confusing rooms layout and lengthy climbing animations, but that's not a deal breaker. It's a decent, welcome change of pace and interesting way of incorporating them with the story. Heading down to the lower labs, our heroes arrive in time to witness Dr. Jacob undergoing the final moments of his own transformation, where he utters a few final words before finally succumbing to the Dinocyte cell.
You're Dr. Jacob?
Putting him out of his misery and looting his body for a key to the safe next to his workstation, the dynamic duo checked the recently deceased doctor's computer for info on the mutation. Apparently R305 can slow down the effects of the changing, which is good to know since on the way out, Elliot changes for the final time. This is definitely the closest and most literal aspect of survival horror that Blue Stinger has to offer.
If you change again, I'll kill you.
Being put on a literal timer to cure Elliot's infection before it's GG. Heading back up the way we came and faffing about with some pipes, the boys managed to flood one of these side rooms in order to let Elliot take an R305 bath. This extends the timer by another 30 minutes, offering a little more breathing room to tackle what's to come. Rummaging around the lower levels, we find a scared dog in a kennel that we can't do anything with currently. There's also a bunch of fish in a water tank. Turning a valve opens the air duct, allowing Elliot to dive on in and grab a key to the mines, and promptly drown from the piss-poor swimming controls and the fish's hitboxes preventing him from surfacing. A quick do-over and a little better RNG, and we successfully fish out the access card. Down in the mines, we find a power mixer for Elliot, which is a cement mixing tool as a makeshift weapon that's honestly kind of naff, and we also fight the second Metroid outside of containment. It drops a key to the med lab, so heading up, we synthesize a cure for the vector slime that's plaguing our rescuer. This reverts most of the mutations, so now Elliot's looking more like Grimace's bastard son.
Are you all right?
I'm fine now. I'm okay.
Oh, man. I thought I'd have to kill you.
Thanks.
Now that he's back to his normal self, Elliot is able to approach the scared dog and find the clone room's card key hidden in its collar. Because why wouldn't it be? What are you, daft? Inside the clone room, there's a giant dead creature submerged in the water that causes our two heroes to stop and ponder what the hell they were doing with these monsters. Also in the room, hidden underneath a dead creature on the opposite side of this ladder, is a Gigadent disc and Dr. Kimmer's keycard, which will let us out the back door. And straight into an open, empty outdoor area that looks suspiciously arena-like. From here, it's only a brief 5-minute trip down a series of linear hallways with progressively tougher enemies until we reach the bottom and discover the source of that blue light. The logs here show the meteorite crashing into the base before getting stuck in one of the shutters that are covering the deepest parts of the crater. As if that's not enough, there's also a viewport that allows Dogs and Elliot to literally see it for themselves. At this point, they deduce that the Gigadent disc that they looted likely has the answers that they seek as to what the hell's going on. So it's about time to head back to Janine, who just so happens to call them at this exact moment and is relieved to see that Elliot is no longer purple.
What would you like for a present, little girl?
Elliot, you're alive! I want you guys back here now!
Got it, sugar. I've got a present for you.
Nephilim also shows up and manages to convey that she needs help. I don't know, maybe Elliot still has his spidey sense? Either way, this means we gotta rush back, and once again, we have to backtrack all the way on foot. I swear, about a third of the game is just retreading old ground. The only upside in this case is that some of the enemies aren't too perceptive, so you just bolt right past them unnoticed and not waste as much ammo. But the real tragedy is that finishing the camera labs means Dogs changes out of his Santa outfit. The trip back to the command center is about as long and annoying as it was every other time, except in this instance, there's a brief climbing section since the road's utterly bollocksed. At least these life hooks that we picked up earlier mean we can afford a fall or two, since they're consumables that just zip you right back to where you fell, rather than hitting you with an instant game over. This does also lead to a funny animation glitch of Elliot A-posing inside of a pipe before climbing back up. Once back at the command center, the trio recap on what they found, and the line delivery here is by far the worst. It sounds so unnatural, even by the rest of the game's standards. It's a little distracting.
When you guys were checking the visual record, I was able to access it as well. Let's take a look at it again.
Essentially, Janine susses out that Nephilim is the blue light, Gigadent is the name of the crater that the meteor crashed through before getting stuck, and beneath the shutters is a huge egg-shaped chamber with a massive creature growing inside that landed there 65 million years ago. It's been growing all this time, and as of 18 years ago, it started to hatch, which caused the earthquake that sunk the rest of the island. The three determine that their best bet at stopping this is to drop the meteorite Nephilim arrived in onto the egg to possibly prevent it from hatching. Well, the satellite got blown up, and that had the only other emergency plan, so I guess we're gonna have to go with it. Janine then quickly comes up with a plan, but refuses to tell us what it is until we pick up a rifle from her flat, so we're on our way to the last part of town that we couldn't get to before. But not before getting trampled by that rhino bug we saw about 5 hours back. I also wonder what's more absurd, the fact that the cinema only sells 3 tickets total, or that Dogs and Elliot bothered to buy one in the first place. The gate is so small and flimsy, they could easily hop over it. There's literally people turning into monsters and a super kaiju about to be born, and these 2 knobheads are dicking around paying for admission. Guys, this isn't the time! Bloody hell! Oh yeah, no wonder there's only 3 tickets for sale. This movie theater only has 1 screen and no chairs. Like, are they for the projector room or what? Inside, we also encounter a defrosted version of that big boy we saw back in the freezer. It's looking far worse than it did before, but it still turns just as slowly as the last time, so it doesn't take long to put down. Hitting a switch in the back of the room also causes this eyesore to despawn, as well as open up a secret stairway leading into a tiny maintenance hall with some random dead dude, and what has to be the most claustrophobic ladder section I've ever seen. I can't even help but notice that Elliot isn't even making contact with the ladder, he's just kind of hovering above it as if he's developed latent psychic abilities.
What a thrill.
20 seconds later, and we end up in the apartments, another series of locked rooms with incredibly tight interconnecting hallways. This whole section in particular really highlights how blooming dreadful the camera controls can be. I swear, I must have spent more time admiring Elliot's stupid mop head than I did getting to see what I'm actually bloody well shooting at. To say they went too far with the extreme close-ups would be putting it mildly. Every hallway is occupied with enemies that I can't even see, and it's so cramped I can't really do anything except tank the damage while firing blindly in hopes that I'll hit something. Upon finally arriving at Janine's apartment, the duo are denied entrance since her neighbors played a little trick on her ID card, removing access to her own flat in an effort to get her to attend their stupid Christmas party.
Hi, Janine. It's Christmas. Upset because your ID card wouldn't work, huh? Well, then come on over to our party. Look, we played a little trick on your ID card. Otherwise, we knew you'd never come.
Which just... how? Well, I guess there's nothing else for it but slogging through the monster hallways again to hit up that party and find a keycard hidden in some random plant pot? You what? Also, nice Christmas decorations. Also, nice goon cave. What is this? There's a bunch of posters on the wall, some cut out for the fishing store. It looks like a den of some kleptomaniac, as if someone went around the island nicking everything that wasn't nailed down. I'm honestly shocked we didn't find a katana while we're here. There's also a talking anime doll, a desk full of, what, some Gundams? There's even 3 of those bottled angels that Tim was talking about. You remember Tim, right? The guy that got blown up? Back to scrounging around in the apartments, we find a water gun that we load up in some bath that we can then use to extinguish this fireplace in order to access the secret ladder hidden behind it. Which, if this was a puzzle game, that would probably raise some alarms since the ladder's gotta be like 600 degrees or something, but whatever, he probably still has those insulated gloves from the power plant, he'll be fine. Darting our way across the rooftops, Dogs comes down the chimney to Janine's apartment like Santa on Christmas Eve. While inside, Elliot can't help but snoop around and spots a family picture of Dogs and his ex-wife holding Janine as a baby. Apparently, they got divorced 20 years ago and she passed away sometime after that. And it would almost be an emotional, shocking reveal if it weren't for this out-of-place action music in the background.
My daughter.
No, you're kidding. Wow, the plot thickens. Why did you get a divorce?
And also, it kind of ruins their relationship in retrospect, because Elliot has been hitting on Dogs' daughter this entire time. I would fucking despise Elliot if I was Dogs. Oh my god. Anyway, with that bombshell and having secured the rifle that we came all this way for, it's time to head back to the command center for any last-minute preparations before tackling the final stretch of the game. Also, predictably, Elliot, having the social grace of a gnat, immediately draws attention to Dogs being Janine's father before dipping out of the room.
Is that any way to talk to your father? I'll be out for a while.
What a muppet. Before anything can really come of it, however, Neffy floats up through the floor and makes a creepy pasta face that jump scares Janine into embracing Dogs and calling him Dad. So there is that, I guess? With all that feelings stuff out of the way, Janine presents her plan to blow up the destroy the hydraulic pump that should force the remaining shutters to open up. So she's gonna make a 300-meter shot to bullseye the pump like Womp Rat's back home. So she's finally gonna join in the family reunion, but she's sadly not playable though. Janine is immediately shuttled off with Dogs anyway, as the watercraft to reach our destination only holds 2 people, and between Janine's injured leg and Dogs' lackluster swimming skills, that leaves us with Elliot having to run, dive, shoot, and run some more down this long tunnel. Upon reaching the other side, it turns out the elevator that Dogs and Janine went up got stuck, so now we're gonna have to play repairman for a second time and climb our way to the top of the tower to fix it manually. So we basically gotta platform our way up this rickety tower with literal crumbling supports and a bunch of tentacles along the way without getting knocked off. Which I promptly do and have to repeat the tunnel section again because I didn't notice the save point around a corner, and I used all my life hooks because I didn't realize they were consumable items. Fuck. I like how the nearby vending machines are charging $500 for life hooks too, knowing how bloody dangerous these work conditions are. I also like how the devs put items on these breakaway tiles to kill the player. Like, of course I'm gonna fall for it, but I also survived and got to see that funny A-pose pull-up animation for the final time. So who's the real loser here? Me, it's still me. It's still me. After hitting the top of the tower and resetting the elevator, Janine tells us that it's going to take 3 minutes to set up a rifle, then another 45 seconds to fire 3 rounds. Which, you were stuck in the elevator all this time. Couldn't you have just done that when you were having a heart-to-heart with your dad? So, because of Janine's inability to multitask, we're now going to have to face our final timed section. And this one is, without a doubt, the absolute worst one. We've got to prevent her from dying for just shy of 4 minutes against 2 enemies that are invulnerable to damage, and they'll prioritize beelining straight for her. So this part is a lot of trial and error and a bit of luck on getting good RNG with their AI. Or abusing their AI, I should say. This is by far the hardest fight in the entirety of Blue Stinger, and I can definitely see some people getting stuck here for a lot longer than I did. I think I just got lucky, to be honest. The worst part is that the timer hit 0 on my second try, but she got hit at the same time, so it doesn't count, I guess. On my third try, they double-teamed Elliot to death, but by the 4th attempt, I managed to get into a rhythm of knocking them away while keeping mostly in the center, just alternating between the two while also cycling out Elliot and Dogs whenever their ammo started to run dry. And again, I think I just got lucky since they kept trying to reach Janine while stuck in this corner of the platform, so they were effectively just walking in place while Elliot stun batoned them for like half the fight. After the timer expires and through the power of cutscene ex machina, Dogs and Elliot push the unkillable monsters over the edge and Janine shoots her shots. The plan actually works and allows both Neffy and a meteorite to fall the rest of the way into the egg chamber and hit the giant monster right in the dick. Come on, you can't tell me that didn't hit him in the dick. Soon the ground starts to shake, and it shakes so much that Dog sounds like a different VA. The big bad crawls out of the crater just in time for Neffy to burst out of its crotch in this green explosion. Then the two start having a kaiju fight straight out of Godzilla. It turns out Nephilim wasn't able to beat him, however, as we then have it busting down the lab wall and showing up for the final boss fight in that suspiciously open area from before. I've gotta say, the design of this thing is pretty cool, and seeing it up close along with the camera panning up to really showcase the difference in size is kind of awesome, really. It is substantially smaller than it looked in the cutscene, but that's likely just a limitation of the game engine. It's fine. The fight itself isn't too complex, unfortunately. It's not like you need to target and lock onto a weak point like in Metal Gear Solid. Here, you mostly just want to keep running from one side of the arena to the other to attack or heal up when necessary. All the while trying to avoid its fire attacks, which even at max health still chunks Elliot for about a fifth of it. Once you get them low, the ground collapses beneath them and the immobilized big bad will keep on spewing fire at you, so just continue to run around shooting it until you finally put it down for good. Which, I couldn't not have Elliot crack open a final cold one for a job well done. I think he's definitely earned it. With our big bad finally destroyed, the weird freezing bubble surrounding the island starts to dissipate, causing it to fall like snow on Christmas Day. The gang then watches Nephilim as she slowly floats off, and we even get a cutaway to Tim, who's somehow still alive. Has he just been floating on some random tire all this time? It's a happy ending in any case. Except, after the credits roll, we see Nephilim floating in space before she morphs into some kind of ball and a bunch of meteors that fire off into the distance, leaving behind some kind of launch rock before it pans over to reveal dozens more of them, setting up for a sequel that never came to be. This ending just leaves me with all sorts of questions. So, was it just a 65 million year life cycle? The Nephilim looks like a fairy because she saw it. Did the big bad look like a dinosaur because the meteorite wiped out the dinosaurs? Did it like consume their DNA or something? So wait, are they just gonna keep causing mass extinction events on other inhabited planets on repeat? That's actually kind of awesome. I wonder if they have any answers for this in their other game, Illbleed. Perhaps I'll have to cover it sometime to find out. So that's Blue Stinger. Outside of its ending, which definitely left me with a few questions, it's a fairly predictable story of action-adventure and mild survival horror, where the action is incredibly mediocre, the adventure is marred by too much retreading of familiar ground, the horror, except for one or two instances, just doesn't match the tone of the rest of the game, and the survival would be good if it wasn't for the fact that there's infinitely respawning enemies, so you have an unlimited supply of whatever resources you need. Like, Blue Stinger gets close to being actually kind of good, not great, but decent enough, but as it is, it's just below average. Not to mention the poor camera controls, combined with claustrophobic level design at times, making both combat and exploration more of a chore than it otherwise needed to be. The story set pieces only ever play out one way either, so there's no real replay value other than going for unlockables for subsequent playthroughs. The music can be good at times, but it quickly becomes as repetitive as the combat and level design. And as much as I loved the cheesy, stilted voice acting that could be unintentionally funny at times, and the chemistry that develops between Dogs and Elliot, especially Dogs with his absurd reaction to things, it's still not quite enough to make up for all of Blue Stinger's other shortcomings, which is really unfortunate.
No shit.
Is it at least a good holiday game? No, not even remotely. Do I regret playing it? No, but then I would only really recommend this to anyone that has a good deal of patience and experience in this kind of game already. With all that being said, I think that about concludes my thoughts on Blue Stinger. Thank you to everyone that stuck with me and bothered watching all of this. I hope you enjoyed it nearly as much as I enjoyed making it. I'm going to aim to put forward more long-form content like this in the near future, so please look forward to that. Until then, keep on smiling, and I'll see you all next time.